everybody. Welcome to the first stream of the week, and I see so much generosity already. Scorpio Dan, that's very kind of you, and Dancing Dog 60. I saw you gifted some memberships before the stream started. Thank you so much. And of course, it's the first stream of the week, so it's time for me to give some memberships. Here we go, 5 memberships, and yes, it's extremely cold in New York City. Super cold. Some might even say too cold. In fact, I will say it. It's too cold here. I didn't sign up for this. I don't live in Minnesota. I live in New York. It's supposed to be regular temperature. All right. So thank you so much for joining me for today's live stream. It seemed like we were a little bit back to normal with Captain America Brave New World, but things are still slow. Things are still a little slow, but I managed to piece together a live stream. Some of you, I saw one person be like, I don't like the Saturday Night Live story. You're going to like it once we go into it. It's a great business story. I think it's very interesting. And if you were a studio executive, particularly in the streaming television space, you would be all over it. All right, so let's get started. As always, please try to keep your questions and comments to the story at hand. I'll open up each section to questions and comments at the end of each section. And then at the very end of the stream, as always, 10 minutes of Ask Me Anything. Oh, thank you, MM92. All right, so story number 1. Hold on. Story number 1. Boop. All right. Oh, look, I covered up poor Christopher Nolan a little bit. He's like, I didn't win 2 Oscars to get covered up. All right. So yesterday, on what was officially a weekend, still, it was President's Day, Universal decided to put an end to the who is playing Odysseus drama online. People I know in Hollywood were like, how is anybody confused on this? It's clearly going to be Matt Damon. But some people wanted it to be Tom Holland. So they were like, forget it. Also, maybe they're shooting and they're worried people are going to get photos on set because they're shooting on practical sets in Europe. So they're like, let's put out a picture of Matty D. So they did, Matt Damon, a first look. And I was hoping that they were going to give first looks at all the cast members. I was like, oh, wouldn't this be great if they showed everybody? And then I could do a whole video on first looks. But it's kind of early. This movie doesn't come out until July 2026. Remember, we've talked about whether or not this movie or Spider-Man will move. Because right now they come out 2 weeks apart. Or maybe actually even just a week apart. And Tom Holland and Zendaya are in both of them. I don't think the Odyssey is going to move, especially now that I see this picture. But we're going to discuss it, all right? So yes, for those of you, I thought the Odyssey was like required reading in high school. I had to read it. Has anyone here read the Odyssey? I don't remember it. And boy, it's really freaking long. I'm not going to reread it. Let's do a poll. I think we did the poll before. Have you read the Odyssey? Yes. Remember it. Remember it fully. And then yes, remember parts of it. That's me. I remember the parts that I liked. Yes, do not remember it. Hey, Sam, do not remember it at all. And then nope. All right, so anyone who's watching, by the way, can vote in a poll. You don't have to be a member to vote in a poll. But, Sam, your teacher sounds awesome who fan cast the Odyssey. Way to work hard and make sure students are interested. I love it. It's a poem. This better not be in poem. The dialogue better be real dialogue. If it's a poem, I don't even think Christopher Nolan can overcome poetry as dialogue. I'd be like, you went too far. You flew too close to the sun, Nolan. But I would be surprised if he was that stupid. It's the story of Odysseus, who is a very successful and respected soldier who, after fighting in the Trojan War for 10 years, takes 10 years to get home. Why? Because he ticked off Poseidon. And so he has to go through all this crazy stuff, right? And so a lot of stuff happens, and eventually he gets home. Tom Holland, I suspect Tom Holland is playing his son, who is a big part of the story. Some people feel he might be one of the Greek gods. I feel like Stefan from Saturday Night Live. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, this story has everything. It's got, like just so much stuff. And it seems to have almost every actor. Not a single one of them Greek, which is hilarious. But anyway, but yeah, it's a very complex story, and it seems to have a very large cast. So yes, it is going to be a period piece. Oh yeah. I'm very excited about that. I told you maybe he'd be doing a more modern version, which would maybe explain the cast to a degree, right? Like it's a British warship. And they're like, nope, it's the originals. But I am excited that it's a period piece. Why? Because I know my cinema. And we'll talk about that in a moment. It would be great if it was like Blood of Zeus, Chris Con. But I don't think that Christopher Nolan, he's pretty good at action. I'll be interested to see. But I have a theory as to what he's doing. You can kind of see from my chapter times. So wow, as people are saying, what a way to spend your Oscar capital. Universal's like, we love you, Nolan. Thanks for coming here from Warner Brothers. What do you want to do next? Go to Disney World? And he's like, no, I want to make like probably another Oscar major film. I want to do, he basically wants to do his Roman sandal epic. Practical, like it's amazing. And he's going to have it ready for next summer. That's really, really, really incredible. I think it could do $1 billion, CM. I mean, as long as it doesn't get tripped up by things that would trip up anybody else. But I think coming from Nolan, I think like there are a lot of guys who like Nolan in particular. I hope he gets better at writing women, but it doesn't seem to bother his male fans. I can see why it wouldn't, I think like he couldn't have picked a better project. Like when I see this coming together, I'm like, it's genius. It might be actually the smartest thing that Nolan has ever done. I have problems with Nolan's work. I will be there soon. Obviously as a reviewer, I would see it, I would review it. But like, as I'm sure everybody I know, how do you not go and see Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey in IMAX? Everybody goes. It's just something you can't miss, just like you're supposed to read it in high school. Although 43% of you haven't read it. All right, let's look at the poll for a second here. That's shocking. What's happened to the education system? 42% of you have not read it. That's shocking. Well, that's Christopher Nolan's like, excellent. I'll tell you the story. Don't worry about it. 31% of you have read it and only remember parts of it. 13% of you have read it and remember it all. Wow, good for you. And then 12% of you have read it but don't remember it at all. Aided Buffalo, maybe it is only required reading in U.S. schools. That's interesting. I don't know. It's like considered like one of the greatest pieces of writing of all time. All right, so clearly I'm like, he's doing a Roman sandal epic. Now, back in the day, they made some of the greatest movies of all time. These movies still hold up. They're phenomenal. Now, they were very old school Hollywood, and they had Western stars in them. Not one of them was regionally correct, and it didn't matter. So let's go through them. Now, you might be like, what's Troy doing there? I thought it was funny that some people pointed out Troy. I saw a comment that said it should be Sean Bean from Troy. And I'm like, Troy is not the type of film that Christopher Nolan wants to emulate. He's not going to be doing anything from that. But I think, Christopher Nolan knows his cinema history, and he wants to be up there with the great. He already is. But I think, he's very successful for like his genre filmmaking. And, I think Oppenheimer was a step in the right direction. It finally got him his Oscar. But I think like he really, he wants to do something that I think leans into people who like his genre work, like his sci-fi stuff like Inception and Interstellar and Tenet, but also but in the comic book stuff, but yet still have credibility within the industry. So I think he's emulating the great directors, particularly of Hollywood and especially Britain. All right, so Ben-Hur. Ben-Hur is, this is William Wyler, actually. So Ben-Hur, Charlton Heston used to be in Charlton Heston. He was in all the Roman sandal epics. Okay, so Charlton Heston, he was in Ben-Hur, extremely well-known film. These are all major Oscar nominees and winners. Then of course there's the 10 Commandments. I love the 10 Commandments. I watch it every Easter. It's phenomenal, and I know that it's totally not regionally or historically accurate, but it's great. Okay, it's just really good stuff. Yul Brynner does a lot to make this movie great. All right, so it's an incredible film. It's really, really strong. So that is Cecil B. DeMille, the icon. All right, then You've got Lawrence of Arabia, David Lean. I'm a big David Lean fan. David Lean is considered like the best, you should watch all of these, by the way, like the best British director of all time, all right? Or certainly one of them. And Lawrence of Arabia is considered, I think Dr. Zhivago is his best film, and I also like his Charles Dickens. Nobody adapts Dickens like Lean. Great Expectations and Oliver Twist. I just watched Oliver Twist is a little problematic, but it's exceptionally well done. So really, really fantastic, David Lean. And Lawrence of Arabia, remember, David from the Alien movies copied himself off of Peter O'Toole in this role. So, you can start to understand the casting when you look at this. Spartacus. Spartacus is Stanley Kubrick. I love Spartacus. I'm a big Spartacus fan. It's an incredible movie. Although it's very strong. Kirk Douglas, great actor. If you want to watch a movie, you just go watch a Kirk Douglas movie, and it would be hard for you to find a bad one. So anyway, what's interesting though is if after I watched Spartacus again during the pandemic, I was looking for 3-hour movies during the pandemic. I was like, I need to kill some time. All right. So Braveheart is the exact same formula. Braveheart is the exact point by point story for pretty much for Spartacus. If you watch those two movies back to back, you will see that Mel Gibson clearly got Spartacus and studied it like a crazy person. All right, because he's a crazy person. Very good. He's a very strong filmmaker, but he's crazy. All right, that's right. I'm getting my Robert Osborne on Mika. I miss Robert Osborne. I got to see him once on the street, and I did go up and tell him how much he affected my life. He was very gracious and wonderful. If you don't know who Robert Osborne was, he used to be the only host of Turner Classic Movies. And it has not been the same since his passing. And then, of course, Gladiator! That's how Elizabeth Taylor said it when it won Best Picture. It won Best Picture back in the day. So Gladiator, of course, is from Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott was doing real well. That was kind of like, and then he ran into a wall of people just having major problems with his historical epics. The Last Duel, Napoleon, even Gladiator 2. He just lost it. But Gladiator, I have to tell you, I love Gladiator. Although I was rewatching Gladiator, not only during the pandemic, but then again to get ready for Gladiator 2. And I was like, not a single person here is from Italy. It was driving me crazy. I was like, no one has an Italian accent. It's driving me nuts. But it's okay. It is what it is, and the movie is phenomenal, and it's an incredible, incredible movie, and it's one of the greatest movies of all time. So I think that Christopher Nolan's like, move over, guys. Me too. He's like, put my name in that list, baby. So it makes me wonder. These films are such big Oscar contenders that it makes me feel like he might get more Oscars. It's weird. We'll talk about the Oscars in a moment, this year's Oscars. But they don't give a lot of awards to big movies anymore. They like to celebrate the small films that they feel need the help. It's been a while since a big blockbuster has been able to get Best Picture. Oppenheimer was a rare exception, but they were like, Nolan, it's Nolan's time. So I think that the Odyssey, if it's done right, again, there's like a couple of things that could trip it up, but if anyone can get past those hurdles of today, it would be Nolan. And then, of course, what's so brilliant about it is that also he's got his Zack Snyder going on there. Remember, Christopher Nolan is a Snyder fan. He helped pick him to take over DC with Man of Steel. Christopher Nolan's a producer on Man of Steel, or executive producer. There are pictures of him at the premiere. So he's a fan of Zack Snyder, and I think there is a crossover in their fandoms. And so when I saw the color scheme of this picture, of this first look, I was like, that's 300. I know 300 when I see it. With the color palette and men. And I feel like, I don't know, Zack Snyder knew the importance of sex appeal though, or cheesecake from women as well. I'll be curious to see how the women are portrayed in this movie. Because again, Christopher Nolan always does a horrible job with female characters. We might have one that gets people's attention now and then, but he's just not very good at it. And his wife is his business partner. So I don't understand how this is happening. I'm like, just, your wife's right there, man. He's got a ton of women in this movie, so hopefully he's turned a corner. But yeah, I really do feel that he's got a mix, which is so funny, of if you told, I would bet you he's doing is like, I'm doing Lawrence of Arabia meets 300. And I'm like, oh my God, you're a genius. I mean, to me, this is what he's doing. And I think that's really brilliant. You know, Danny, 300 is a comic book movie. It's based on Frank Miller's comic. But I think it's so entrenched in today's pop culture that, you know, it gives the Odyssey a little bit of comic book cachet, even though it's not, you know, some would say it was the first comic book. I mean, when was this thing written? Okay, let me tell you. It's like, I was talking to somebody about Aesop's Fables the other day, and they were written before Christ was born. And I was like, that's a pretty good story. If Aesop's Fables have been around since before Jesus Christ, you should probably listen to that, what their stories are in Aesop's Fables. All right, so the Odyssey, I believe, was also before Christ. When was it written? 8th century BC. This thing's been around 4 centuries, literally hundreds and hundreds of years. That's right, Sana. Poets passed it down orally because it was around before there was papyrus, before they had created paper. That's how big of a deal the Odyssey is. I mean, wouldn't it be funny to go back in time and go find Homer and be like, guess what? Christopher Nolan is going to do an adaptation of the Odyssey. Although, interestingly enough, it obviously is past any ownership rights. So it's free. They don't have to pay anybody for it. It's in the public domain. So I think that's hilarious. That makes it even better. And then, I do wonder how it'll work with today's global fandom. All the movies that I just highlighted got away, even 300 got away with stuff that I'm not sure things would get away with today. You know, speaking of Ridley Scott, his Exodus was a real turning point. Do you remember that was one year that Exodus and Gods of Egypt came out at basically the same time? And there was like a reckoning. And people became really, very demanding about that movies should be reflective of what they're depicting. And, I think we're still trying to figure out if that's the case. No one complained about it with Gladiator 2. So, I mean, I think it depends on how. I think Christopher Nolan is very strong, and I think it would be hard for this movie to fail. I think it just looks. I think it's just an extremely good pitch, and I think it does call to mind these classic films that are still very popular even to this day. Britt says he doesn't have the right helmet on. I couldn't find the tweet. I tweeted this yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, looks cool." And someone wrote back, this is not at all historically accurate. They're like, the cape doesn't match the hat, doesn't match the stuff on the wall. And I was like, I wonder if anyone's going to care about that. And the fact that you brought up the exact same thing makes me wonder if that could be an issue. People were talking about Gladiator 2. They were like, there weren't no sharks or rhinos in the Gladiator arena. And Ridley Scott was like, leave me alone, I can't take it. He's like, I don't do research anymore. I would be shocked if Christopher Nolan would really get that off. I hope if Christopher Nolan hasn't hired a historian. It does look more Roman. I actually, even my mother, when I brought this up to her, said, yeah, I thought he looked like he was dressed like a Roman. Isn't he supposed to be Greek? But I mean, he looks like he's dressed in 300, and that was Sparta. They were Greek. Tay, that's very cold. Stay inside. Yeah, I mean, let's see. I mean, honestly, I feel if it looks really amazing and it's got an amazing score and it's visually epic, I mean, it is based on a fictional story. I mean, even I would be like, would I prefer if he had Greek armor on? Yes. Am I going to not see the movie because he's wearing Roman armor? No. I mean, I'm going to go and see it. It looks too cool. So I think it's going to be a really massive hit. I would be surprised if the only thing that can take it down is the casting controversy. But I would be surprised at this point if it doesn't reach $1 billion. Because just everyone feels like they have to go. It is because of the source material and because of the director. So, okay, questions and comments about this story. Oh, hey, Funtrone. Ben 10, I would think Spider-Man 4 would move. I would move it. Oh, Boston Chautauqua is like, Percy Jackson lives. I love it. Ben says, Grace, how do you think Nolan will handle the many supernatural elements of the story? Do you think he'll attempt a more realistic approach? Yes, I do. But they did say that they were filming all over the globe. I think thanks, Danny. I think he'll have a little bit of like I don't see how you can do Circe and not have VFX. You know, Nolan is very against VFX, obviously, as we know from a lot of his work. But I mean, it's a magical, mystical story. You got to have some stuff in there. I think it would be. I mean, let's see. I mean, there was no VFX, magical, mystical stuff in all the movies that I just spotlighted, and everybody was fine with it. Lucas says, do you think Tom Holland can carry? His role is very important. I have yet to see him prove himself outside of Spider-Man. Well, that's the beauty of this movie. He doesn't have to carry. He's not the lead. He's supporting. And there's like, it really is. Speaking of films of old Hollywood, it's an all-star cast. It's an epic cast. It's like, I think it is Christopher Nolan's most star-studded movie to date. It's just so many actors, and a lot of them very big names. So it's going to have a great ad campaign. So I think it's going to be great. Hey, Terry, on your lunch break. Future movie actor says, for the longest time I wanted an Odyssey adaptation that was a sequel to Troy with Sean Bean. You're not going to get it because no one's going to touch the Odyssey now because this is just going to be too big. Hey, Kareem. Let's see here. And remember, Matt Damon was, huge in The Martian. I mean, that movie did extremely well. Alexander, Matt Damon is the lead, but he's in an all-star cast. So he's going to be the consistent actor that you see, but it's just going to be just so many actors coming in that you see throughout the film. Britt, it did not trend top 10. I think if they'd released more photos, it would have. If they'd done the whole cast. But it is very early. It trended top 25, didn't trend top 10. Wanda's attorney, who am I the most excited to see? Well, Tom Holland and the ladies. I want to see Charlize. I want to see Zendaya. I want to see Lupita Nyong'o. I really want to know who everybody's playing. Mia Goth. Just because Christopher Nolan doesn't care about his female actresses doesn't mean I don't. I think Charlize is probably playing his wife, if I had to guess it. Thanks, Art Lover. Hamish says, and Anne Hathaway. I forgot about Anne Hathaway. There's everybody. It really is Stefan. This movie has everything. Hamish says, do you think it could be split into two? No. No one's going to come back to see more Odyssey. I would prefer it be to 3. It could even be a 4-hour epic with a big intermission. You go for it, Nolan. But let's get this done. I don't want to have to come back. Ricardo, I think the budget is going to be quite big, obviously. Oh, see, Weejark and I had the exact same idea. Extra long with a built-in intermission. The Brutalist did it. It was phenomenal. Give me 20 minutes or a 15-minute break. Get more food, use the bathroom. Britt says, is this movie Nolan's test to see if he is a box office draw? I think he is a box office draw. I think it's been proven. And then future movie actor says, do you think Zendaya is playing... I don't even know who Nausicaa is. You know the Odyssey better than I do. Astronomy, I would be shocked if Christopher Nolan ever even touched AI. He doesn't even like to use the cell phone. I'm very excited about the cast. Mr. Andrews says, when are we going to get a trailer? Maybe around the holidays. The Super Bowl 2026? No, maybe. Whenever Christopher Nolan wants to drop it. This is a July movie, and those trailers, Superman came out during December, and that was very successful. So maybe, I think you could see it maybe in front of Avatar. Oh, that's when I would do it. Yes, there's an Avatar coming out in December. I would put a trailer for this in front of Avatar, for sure. And that's a great place to put it. Move over, Jimmy C. I want to play in this sandbox too. Obed, thank you for asking me about my parents. Yes, I think that they would love this movie. My parents love movies. They love them. They go see almost every movie, just like me, because that's who got me to do it myself. And so they will see this movie for sure. Again, It would be very hard for anybody not to see the Odyssey directed by Christopher Nolan. I mean, it's like, do you just not want to be part? It's like, do you not want to be part of society? Ben 10 says he and his dad are there day one. It's going to be a big deal. All right, let's move on to the next story of the day. All right. But Christopher Nolan, really, slam dunk on that one. All right. Adam Sphere, could this kick off the Homer cinematic universe? That's pretty funny. Let's see how much money it makes. All right. Okay. I don't think you're getting any beefcake, Kareem, because I don't think Nolan's a beefcake kind of director. I think he's very anti-beefcake. He's anti, he's not, he casts actors that people do find attractive. Then he's like, you got to bring your own, BYOT, bring your own thirst to Nolan movies. He doesn't provide them at all. He's like, I've given you the tools that you need, but you're going to have to put it together yourself. Okay. Story number 2. Boop. More Oscar talk. All right. The game, it is a-changing. So we had another eventful weekend that I wanted to update you on. So the weekend started off with the Writers Guild Awards, where Anora once again took home one of the screenplay. I think it was Best Original Screenplay. That's another huge win for this movie. It's shocking. Then also I wanted to just bring up that the Penguin also won at the WGA Awards for, won over Ripley and stuff like that for limited series writing. That's incredible. I think that I'm very curious to see what HBO decides to do with their DC content. I mean, they're already getting ready to film Lanterns, but this is very exciting. I think awards wins have saved the Penguin. It's just really, really impressive. Then though, the BAFTAs really threw a monkey wrench into the situation. So Anora didn't win Best Picture at the BAFTAs, but Mickey Madison beat out Demi Moore for Best Actress. Talk about a change. I mean, SAG is this coming weekend, and SAG, I think it's this coming Sunday. You did get a membership in Somnomat. That's hilarious. I think SAG will be probably whoever wins on Sunday, this coming Sunday for SAG, is probably going to be the one who wins the Oscar. But we have a genuine race here, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But then Conclave, finally somebody remembered Conclave. Conclave won Best Picture at the BAFTAs, which isn't too surprising because it's an extremely British film in all the great ways. I love Conclave. I voted for it for Best Picture for the year. Danny, I'm sorry you didn't like it. All right, I see many of you others did as well, though. Did enjoy it. So the question becomes, is Anora now the one to beat? It seems that that's the case. I think you have to wonder, what does Hollywood want its narrative to be? What do they want to be seen to be celebrating? That's always what they do. That's how the Oscars work. And so they wanted to celebrate Emilia Perez. They wanted to celebrate trans rights. And I think they really wanted to kind of have to have a little bit of pushback to the Trump 2.0 organization. Although there are a lot of stories about Hollywood being like, how badly do we want to fight somebody who has just become just so incredibly powerful in such a short period of time? It's an interesting question. There's some scary stories, and Deadline has a story today about how the news is under attack by the Trump administration, and that's really scary stuff. And Hollywood, I think, is a little bit nervous about recreating the, what was it called? The communist, it was a certain senator, McCarthy hearings. The McCarthy hearings, I think they're very nervous about that, especially because this is even more amorphous as to what would be considered, the offending aspect. So I think Hollywood's a little nervous. They're like, leave us alone, please. So I don't know why I guess, but I think the Oscars want to send a kind of a message, like, we're still here, kind of. So I think it's interesting that they picked Anora. They could have picked Conclave. Let's talk about it, all right? But first, I think, so we have two real races. I think almost everything else has been decided. I think pretty much everything else has been decided for the Oscars. I don't think there are going to be a lot of surprises, but I think there are two big questions. Well, Best Actor to a degree, although Adrian Brody keeps winning. The Oscars are first weekend of March, Sana. So I think again, SAG will help settle this, but right now, Demi Moore versus Mickey Madison is a genuine race. So that's pretty exciting. It's been a very long time since we've had that kind of a scenario. And then there's Anora versus Conclave. You know, it's funny that Luke says that Anora is an apolitical movie. Maybe that's why they've decided to pick it, because Conclave is very political. Not in an overt way, but I think that it's certainly more political than Anora. Maybe that's why it's not going to win. That's very interesting, Luke. I'm glad you brought that up. Anora is just kind of liberal in its mindset, but also, to me, it reminds me, again, as I've said many times before, it reminds me of the Green Book win. Green Book won because it pitched itself as the answer to Driving Miss Daisy. It switched the narrative, where the black person was being chauffeured by the white person, and everybody was like, we love that! What a way to show progression and how times have changed, and, you know, everybody, that was a very strong campaign. And I honestly believe, and many of you, I asked why you like Anora. There's a lot of Anora fans online, and a lot of you agreed with my sentiment that I'm going to say here, and that's that Anora is the anti-Pretty Woman, or the anti-Disney fairy tale, but particularly Pretty Woman. Pretty Woman is an extremely successful film. It made Julia Roberts a household name, which is funny because it was like a family movie, a very, very embraced romantic comedy. But it was weird because it was so inaccurate as to the experience of sex workers. So I feel like Anora finally is like a realistic take on that. And even though I thought the movie was not great, I wish there was more story to the movie, to be honest with you. I feel Anora is very amorphous itself. But I do like that element of it. I think that it makes it's a very good, I think that's a great pitch to say it's the opposite of Pretty Woman. Dolly says, saying Anora is apolitical is absurd. Empathy and humanization for the marginalized is overtly progressive. But is it? I think the point is that it's not directly calling anything out. You know, I think you have to be able to look at the movie and want to look at the movie from an intellectual perspective. You know, I think that it's not overt. I think that it's very clear to those who are on the same page, but I don't think that I don't think it's as aggressive as Conclave. Conclave is very aggressive. And maybe they're like, which one is going to get us on the radar of the current administration? Probably a Conclave win, but not an Anora win. You know? I could have made a joke there, but I didn't. Let's just say, you can put it together yourself, but let's say that Anora is somewhat indicative of some of the women. That's all. I know, it's just, I think some of you will see it. See, that joke was as elusive as Anora is, right? I mean, either you see it or you don't. So we'll see. Don't get me in trouble, Isaac Lopez. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what the heck happened to Wicked? Or, as Danny said, what about The Brutalist? Well, I think that, I think that Wicked, unfortunately, is just too happy a movie. They said they wanted to vote for happiness, but they lied. I think that Wicked got a lot of nominations. They're going to obviously, I mean, they won't admit it, but they're clearly going to do a duet at the Oscars, even though they're not nominated because they don't qualify. None of the songs qualify because they were all originally written for the stage. Yeah, Wicked Part 2, but I got to tell you, I don't see Wicked ever being an Oscar winner. I see it being a big Oscar nominee. Maybe it might get some directing and acting awards at the end of the day after the second part, but I don't see it winning. I'd be surprised if it ever won Best Picture. I think Gone is the Day, unless, and also I think John Chu, even though Critics' Choice gave him Best Director, I think John Chu is not, I think he comes from too weak of a background for the Oscars to ever take his work super seriously. I mean, the guy did G.I. Joe, and like Step It Up and stuff like that. It's too big of a leap for Oscars to give it to him. They want to pick somebody else. Oh yeah, I think that Wicked's probably going to win costume design and maybe production design, but I just don't see it win. And it is nominated, but I don't see it winning. And as for The Brutalist, I think Brady Corbett's going to win. And I think probably it's going to win Best Actor as well. Formerly said Todd Phillips did The Hangover. Well, The Hangover is more highly regarded, to be honest with you. I mean, The Hangover is very different than G.I. Joe. And Joker didn't win Best Picture either. It won Actor. That's why I said I think the actor categories are still in play. But Joker never won Best Picture. Tina, popular movies never win at the Oscars, really. Ben 10 says, but what about AI? What about the strikes? Well, there's no AI in Anora or Conclave. What are you talking about? You mean for for Adrian Brody? Well, let's see. I don't know. I'm not quite sure when BAFTA voting was. So, all right. So, what do you guys think? Any questions or comments about this? Mike, Hangover and G.I. Joe wouldn't win Oscars, but we're talking about how it affects how a director is viewed going forward. Elliot says, Wicked is definitely going to win a lock. I like that emoji use for production and costume design. That's a huge win since it's been so long that Oz film won any Oscars. And Paul Tazewell will be the first black man to win costume. Well, is that true? That's wonderful. He definitely deserves it. He did a great job. Brett, I would not consider Parasite a popular movie. Popular movies do a lot at the box office. David, Lord of the Rings did win, but that was back in the day. I think it's changed substantially. Oppenheimer did win, but I think that, they've moved away from the really big movies for a while now, for the most part. Klaus, John Chu maybe might be able to win an Oscar someday, but I think it could take a very long time. Mason says, John Chu said they have something fun planned for the premiere of the Wicked 2 trailer. What's the chance that Ari and Cynthia open the Oscars, which leads to the debut of Part 2 trailer during commercials? I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're maybe going to do an internet online launch or something. I think that you don't want to show the trailer the night that the movie might not win very much. I mean, that's just me. I think they want to close chapter 1 and then move on to 2 and be like, woohoo! Mark, I'm so glad you won a membership. Mwah! Ben says, Anora was a very good film, but I don't think it had some extraordinary element to be awarded outside of Madison's performance. Yeah, I told you, it wouldn't be my choice, but I don't hate it. Little Baby Pizza, of course winning an Oscar means something. It cements your place in Hollywood history. It's a big deal. And, if you win an Oscar, you work forever. Unless you do something really bad. But you basically work forever. Adam's Fear, they're not going to do a Hamilton movie. Certainly not for a very, very long time. Hey, Choose the Bear. Thanks for saying hi. Tina says, for a progressive ceremony, it sounds very exclusive to try and recognize new talent doing great. Well, it is a club. I mean, you have to realize that Hollywood is a club, That's right, Dave. Even if the general audiences don't care about the Oscars, the industry does. Hey, Emilio, that's very generous of you. Thank you. Ricardo, I don't know if Demi Moore has her Oscar secured. As I said, we really have to pay attention to the SAG Awards on Sunday. Klaus, Zoe Saldana, and Kieran Culkin, I think, are locked for Best Supporting Actor and Actress. For sure. Chico says, what are your thoughts on Zoe Saldana winning both Best Supporting Actress so far for all the awards? I think she pivoted really nicely at the BAFTAs. She talked about that she had a trans relative herself and that she made the movie for that person in her life. And I thought that was a great way to take the focus sort of off of what's been happening and to just make it her own personal story. I thought that was very clever. And she was very serious. Before when she was winning, she was all smiles and jumping up and down. And now she just was like, this means so much, and I'm just so glad to be a part of this message, and it's touched my own life personally. And I was like, really nice, Zoe. Nathan says, may I ask why the Oscars don't nominate more popular culture movies such as Marvel, Star Wars, or DC? I think because it's supposed to be art. I mean, Black Panther was nominated and won some Oscars as well in the craft categories. So it can happen, you know? But I mean, it takes a very special movie to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if they do Mr. Freeze in the next Batman movie and they do it right. I wouldn't be surprised if that actor gets nominated. Jeremy Strong. You guys have said Jeremy Strong for Mr. Freeze? That's the best idea ever. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Andrews. The first Star Wars was nominated. Both, you know, 2 people have won for playing the Joker. I mean, I think, you know, it has to be just the right comic book movie. Mr. Magic, Ariana, I think Zoe Saldana's going to win. Ariana Grande's not winning, man. They Barbied Wicked to a large degree. All right. Heath Ledger did deserve that win. And so did, I think, Joaquin Phoenix, even though he killed the legend of the character with the second film. All right, let's go. Yes, that's right. Let's boop it. You're right, mashed. Let's go. All right, story number 3. Boom, baby. Oh, I love this story. Yeah, we better get started because I got a lot to say. All right, so the SNL ratings. I have all these pictures. Here we go. There's Mr. Lorne Michaels celebrating Lorne Michaels. And I think it's very interesting that when you think of Saturday Night Live not only has been going on for 50 years, but Lorne Michaels has been producing it for 50 years. That is amazing. I believe he's in his 80s. And he is just doing phenomenally well. So I thought that was really an amazing run that you rarely see in Hollywood. Even though this is, I guess, to some degree, the TV business. All right, so what's very interesting to me is he has really expanded his relationship with NBC. Not only does he do Saturday Night Live, but he's taken over all of their late night programming. He also produced, Tina Fey. You know, will he ever retire? People are wondering about it. I think Tina Fey is rumored to be the person who will take over. I think she's a great choice, actually. So rare does the person who takes over do a good job. But this, to me, actually seems like a pretty good idea. So it seems like she might be the person to take over, Lorne Michaels' empire. And, of course, he produced a very successful sitcom for her, 30 Rock. All right, then, The Tonight Show is now produced by Lorne Michaels. And then also, Seth Meyers is produced by Lorne Michaels. You know, it's interesting, Mika, that you say that Seth Meyers is rumored. I don't know if he'd be as good as Tina Fey, but maybe. You know, they're all still very close with Lorne. And interestingly, when both Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers eventually move on, you better believe it's going to be another SNL cast member who takes over these shows. So that's something that all SNL cast members should be thinking of. All right. You know, maybe someday, eventually, Kenan Thompson maybe could take over one of these shows. Kenan Thompson, boy, should get more credit for the longest running SNL cast member. And he's so funny. He does a great job. All right, then, so I think that one of the great things that Lorne Michaels did was that he took out his Rolodex and he really flexed the muscles amazingly. So Saturday Night Live is just kind of built for this explosion. Not only does it have a ton of cast members who've gone on to become stars in their own right, but so many people have hosted the show, many of them multiple times, and built up a relationship with the show as a result. So everybody, almost everyone in Hollywood who has any kind of a career has had a contact with Saturday Night Live, and they have their information. So they really, really called in all those favors to create an incredible weekend. Because that's part of what was so amazing. They had a Friday night concert that only aired on Peacock, by the way, and it was amazing. Everybody was like, what happened? Like, I think that the musical guest is often one of the weakest parts of the show. I'm sorry to say. But it was just like it was like people were saying, this is better than the Grammys. This is better than many concerts that people put on. It was like Taylor Swift concert levels of amazing. Everybody was just going nuts. It did extremely well on social media. I'm sure Peacock did amazing numbers. And it was and so many big names showed up. So I think that got everybody really excited for the Sunday night primetime special, which aired on NBC and was also available on Peacock. But unlike the concert, was also available on NBC. So even myself included was like, gotta tune in, gotta see what they have planned after that concert. So the Friday night concert served as a great advertisement for the special. And I think that was very, very, very clever. So how'd it work out? It was a huge hit. 14.8 million people tuned in. That is the best telecast for a live event on NBC since the Golden Globes in 2020. So 5 years. This is the highest rated event for them in 5 years on NBC. Lorne Michaels, you thought he was valuable to NBC before. And I have to tell you, if I were any other streaming service or network, I would say, what else can I turn into an event like Saturday Night Live did for NBC? I mean, that is just like, I think they just created a blueprint. And especially with the concert as the lead up, I mean, that's amazing. That was brilliant. And I mean, everybody should be taking notes. So it even did well on social media. It topped the NBA All-Star Game. It did extremely well on social media, partially because of everybody in attendance, and everybody in attendance was promoting it. So it did very, very well. The All-Star Game, by the way, not only aired on TNT and Max, and we know that nobody apparently subscribes to Max because it never has good viewership numbers, but people apparently had a lot of complaints about the NBC All-Star Game. I was like, why are Kevin Hart and Mr. Beast trending? And it's because people wanted them out of their All-Star Game. But still, a big major basketball sporting event could not compete with the SNL 50th anniversary special. It is almost as good as the Grammys this year, which did 15.4 million. Grammys technically has the edge still, but that's almost identical. I'm amazed at that performance for SNL. And then for reference, Saturday Night Live usually brings in around 5 million viewers for an episode on Saturday night. That itself is very, very impressive. That's better than a lot of television and streaming shows do. So that's amazing. So SNL, no wonder it's still on the air and every week. I mean, I watch it every weekend, even though sometimes it's not particularly good. And SNL has really done a good job, by the way, I think, of harnessing social media. Part of me feels they put their sketches up online too early, but I mean, they get tremendous viewership and tremendous exposure. It's very, very strong. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the show. All right, so let me ask you, like I can see you guys, some of you talking about if you watched it. Let's do a poll. Did you watch the SNL 50th special? And then yes on NBC, yes on Peacock, NBC Live, Peacock Live, yes streamed on Peacock after, and then no. By the way, anyone who's watching can vote. You do not have to be a member to vote in a poll. All right, so let's talk about the show. So one of the most interesting things to me was the difference in the style of comedy. I guess I should have said, did you see clips online on YouTube? Oh, well. Yeah, see, I don't care, Bear watched it on YouTube. Darn it. Let me do the poll. Oh, well, most of you didn't even want it. Let me do the poll again. Sorry, I gotta do it again. It's not right. Start a poll. Did you watch SNL 50th anniversary? Yes, live on NBC or Peacock. I feel like I'm doing a promo. Yes, streamed after. Yes, on YouTube, on social media. We'll just say yes on social media. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and then no. Okay. Now you can vote on that. And again, anybody who's watching can vote. So I thought the difference in the style of comedy was fascinating to behold, and that the original cast members from back in the day had a very different style from the new ones. They were slower, more thoughtful, less tied to current events, which is, I think, very indicative of the shows that they were on, the eras of Saturday Night Live. So I thought that was just interesting. And I think, that's why I picked this picture of Steve Martin and John Mulaney. Although another time that it was very evident, I felt, was when you saw Bill Murray on Weekend Update. He had such a different style of comedy than Colin Jost and Michael Che. All right, then let's go through the sketches in no particular order because I was running late to the stream. All right, so Adam Sandler did an amazing song once again about Saturday Night Live, and for a while there at least was the most watched sketch of the evening on YouTube. Very popular, very, very popular, very moving. It was really funny, but also had really good behind-the-scenes information. He just did a really nice job. So that was a big deal. Then, yes, the wedding Domingo, but they brought in Pedro Pascal and Bad Bunny. You know, Marcello is becoming a very popular member of Saturday Night Live, not only because he's very funny, well, he's for three reasons. Humor. I think he represents the Latin audience, I think in a very good way that the Latin audience, I think, reacts to. And he does a great job. I think he does a really, really good job. I think, you know, a lot of his sketches sometimes are in Spanish. That's a big deal. I mean, who doesn't love the Christopher Columbus sketch he did with Bad Bunny? I mean, I just watched that again the other day because it was just so funny. See, David appreciates it. And then he's very good friends with Pedro Pascal and Bad Bunny, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in the future they make a movie together or some kind of show. I mean, there's definitely something developing there. It's funny that somebody said they didn't like Bad Bunny there. That's the hottest I've ever seen Bad Bunny look. I mean, he always is very hot. But when he stepped on stage for this, I was like, damn. He looked really, really great. He also was at the concert and did a wonderful job. Really wonderful job at the concert on Friday. But yeah, and they had a whole spectrum covered here in sexuality. They did a great job. And I have to say, Molly Shannon did a great, she's not in this picture, but Molly Shannon did a great job in this sketch. And she had to compete with an awful lot, and she still really stole the spotlight. So she was great. So this was a good sketch. I liked it. I didn't like the sketches at the beginning of the show, but they got stronger as the night went on. There was a lot of filler though. I have to say, well, the concert felt like you were like, wow, this is so good. When you got to this anniversary special, you were like, yeah, this is what SNL is like. Wildly uneven, but when it's good, it's really good. All right, then, let's see here. I thought this was great to have Mike Myers show up. You know, he has so many things he could have done, and I think it was interesting that he decided to do his Linda character. But it was funny. I liked it. I thought it was a nice sketch. I don't know if it's the one I would have picked for Mike Myers to come back in, but it really brought, you know, it was so old school. It was so old school. I think that was really nice. All right, then Meryl Streep joining Kate McKinnon as the mother of this character. This was amazing. This was so funny. I have to say, I think this should be the end of this sketch because how many times can this woman get abducted and it's not that funny anymore because it's always the same thing that happens? But, yeah, Meryl Streep, bringing it back for Meryl Streep made it worth it, and Meryl Streep was amazing. Also, by the way, fun fact, Meryl Streep is dating Martin Short. They hard launched their relationship at the concert on Friday. It's sitting next to each other, coming on the red carpet together. I mean, well, walking the red carpet together. Whew! But it's adorable. It's so great. They're such an odd, interesting couple that you have to root for them. You're like, what? It must be one. It must succeed because it's just so great. All right, Adam Sphere got my joke, my accidental joke. But yeah, so that was great. She's divorced, Mr. Magic. Oh, you guys got my joke. Haha, the beauty of live. All right, so this was a great sketch. All right, then this sketch was incredible. I loved this sketch. By the way, Eddie Murphy was the only comedian who could gel with everybody. Eddie Murphy was the only comedian who updated his act for current styles of comedy. And that just goes to show what an incredible professional he is. He was phenomenal. He did 2 sketches of the evening. First, he was in Black Jeopardy doing an impression of Tracy Morgan that made me laugh so hard I almost fell over when he was talking about 4-cheese lasagna and how he refuses to ingest 3 cheeses. I mean, it was incredible. It was just so funny. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And then this was good too. This wasn't as funny. But to see Eddie Murphy and you know, Kenan Thompson there, great, is I think wonderful. But for Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell to do a sketch together, that was great. That was just really special to see. They should consider working together on something else. They gelled, they fit together really well. And then, of course, even though I don't want to do it, I have to because I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. Mr. Tom Hanks. So the first thing is that Tom Hanks introduced sketches that were too horrible to show. Sketches that had not aged well. And they did it as a memoriam. And I thought, by the way, so I wanted to say this on a side note. On social media, anytime anybody posted, anytime anybody commented and responded to the in memoriam thing, they acted like it was actually an in memoriam. And it made me feel like there must be so many bots or people who aren't actually bothering to check out what the tweet is about before they do a reply. I think it was just such an exposure for what Twitter is and social media is like these days. Because it was just so many tweets that did not recognize what was the twist and the joke there. So that was just shocking. All right, so Tom Hanks brought back a very good character that he did. The reason I say it was a good character is that it did interest. The first time this character came on was in Black Jeopardy. And I thought that it made a constructive, helpful joke. And that it was like, these groups are more alike than they might realize. That, Black culture and super conservative culture does have some overlap. And everybody got along and they were being friends. And I thought that was nice in the first time that they showed this character. So I thought it was positive. So I was so surprised that they decided to go negative on Sunday night. I didn't even understand why he wouldn't shake Kenan Thompson's hand. I was like, what does he think the issue there is? I mean, the joke wasn't funny. It didn't land. And I don't understand why, I think it just seemed petty to me. And I thought that this was a mistake. I was like, why'd you do it, Tom Hanks? I think it didn't make a point. And I thought it was, mean. And I think we have to find a way to move forward together. I mean, the country was 50-50 basically, in the election. And so, while obviously there are some things to take a stand on, I think this undid. Did he, Ben? I thought that in the first, when he took the step back in the first one, now that you bring it up, I think to me it played like he wasn't sure if maybe he was allowed, Like he was like, oh, I don't, is this okay? It was like that kind of, it was acknowledging the tension between the two groups. That's how it kind of played to me the first time it happened in the first sketch that it was done years ago. Here, it seemed like he was genuinely afraid. And it really didn't work. I thought that was not good. And I also didn't like the song that Andy Samberg did with Bowen Yang, where they said that it was tougher to work on Saturday Night Live than in a coal mine. And I was like, really? Really? Brian, you say get over it, it's a joke, but I don't like they make a joke about liberals crying all the time. I'm pretty sick of that joke. I'm like, none of us are crying. Or we get unusual, or that, we get unusually angry. I mean, I think, this has actually become very serious. So I don't think we should be trolling each other anymore. Future movie actor says, my parents and I watched it on TV, but we were behind about an hour thanks to DVR. That's the way to watch it. I did the same thing. And I fast forwarded some stuff in the commercials for sure. All right, so does anybody have any questions or comments about this story? Mr. Andrews, Tom Hanks has gotten in trouble before. Tom Hanks' whole appeal was that he appealed to everyone. And so I just don't, if he's going to take a stand, I understood him taking a stand on the COVID vaccine. But, that's right, Mega Man H. It is fair to point out that that senator wouldn't shake Kamala Harris's hand, that Republican senator, or her husband. But still, thanks, Harley Quinn Dove. But that was for a different reason. I mean, if you're going to call back to that, you have to make that. But the whole point of that character was supposed to be a bridge. The Tom Hanks character was supposed to be a bridge, and I don't know why SNL wanted to blow it up. All right, so did you watch the SNL 50th anniversary special? 48% of you didn't watch it. Go watch it. It's a lot of fun. 28% of you watched it on social media. The majority of you watched it on social media. That is amazing. 14% of you watched it live, and then 9% of you watched it afterwards, which is for about like 23%. Wow, that's amazing. That's very interesting. All right, we're almost at the Q&A. Let's see here. Adam Stewart says, I watched on Peacock and the sitcom St. Dennis Medical played after the show and it was hilarious. I like St. Dennis Medical, although because it takes place in a hospital, sometimes it's a little bit too depressing for me. I'm like, I don't want to hear about these sad things. I will say about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, I do feel that they were trying to dip a toe back in to see if they could like go back to doing their appearances, and I don't think it worked out so great for them. I don't think it was a disaster, but I think real damage has been done, and that's why I said they never should have pursued this. Do you know how many people fight making movies and TV shows? Like, it's very bad. That's why you have agents and managers and lawyers. And they sort this through, and you don't talk to each other, and then you go on your way after the thing comes out. Jordan, I think Kevin Costner and Jenna Ortega were in on that joke, but they had a hard time not breaking, which I thought was really endearing. Okay, let's do the Q&A. All right, 10 minutes. So till 10, well, I'm really kind of running late today, so let's actually do till 2:50, and then I have to go, I'm afraid. That's right. Booyah, Marduk. Thanks, Rusty. I'm glad you like this shirt. Some people didn't like it when I debuted it, and it was one of the more expensive shirts that I've bought. I used to buy really like really cheap clothing, but then I read that like the chemicals are really bad for you. So now I have to be really careful. I try to look for sales. Joe Haas says, I think the right is overreacting, but I think that the skit was in bad taste. That's a perfect description. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have had Tom Hanks trend at number 1 for 48 hours, but I do think that it was in bad taste. Let's see here. Danny, I will be covering Daredevil weekly for sure. I'll definitely be doing weekly breakdowns on Daredevil. I'm a little nervous about how the show is going to perform, but fingers crossed it does well. And I'll also be covering The Last of Us as well. You know, Jose, it's funny you bring up Keke Palmer. I don't know where she'll show up next, but damn, she looked amazing at SNL. She looked great, and also Ayo Edebiri they both looked so phenomenal. Their stylists both did an incredible job. They had a similar look, actually, in their styling. Like sleek black dresses and really long, flowing, beautiful hair. They looked amazing. Scores, I'm so glad that you enjoyed my MCU video that's up right now. Future movie actor says, being caught in between that bit was pretty funny. Yeah, it was. I like that Kevin Costner was there. I want to see the second half of Horizon. Future movie actor says, my mom's seen Conclave and I've seen Conclave and Dune Part 2. She and I watch all the Best Picture nominees for each Academy Awards every year. That's lovely. What a nice thing to do with your mother. Thank you, Ryan K. Alexander, yeah, social media is particularly not kind to Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, which is so sad for Ryan Reynolds because he was doing so well on social media. He almost, in some ways, it's like what Jada Pinkett Smith did to Will Smith. It's just crazy that this has happened. Just Blaze Disney. I'm not going to do White Lotus breakdowns. There's no interest on YouTube for the show. I mean, and I'm pretty sure that they would not be very well received by YouTube once we get to the episodes that people are going to want to talk about. I think it's doing very well on social media, like on Twitter and stuff, and probably TikTok, but YouTube, there's no interest in White Lotus on YouTube. Apricot Warrior says, hey, Grace, we just need a new franchise at this point to bring people together. Let's see who can do it. Maybe it's the Odyssey. Ben says, Grace, do you think Mattel's Masters of the Universe film might spin off to a She-Ra project? That would be great. I would love to see. I just hope they get it right. I'll be very curious to see how it turns out. This modern angle, I think, is an interesting take. Oh, is Lady Gaga doing SNL in 2 weeks? That's great. I'll be curious to see how she does in the sketches. That's very exciting. Oh, I see a number of you also think Kiki looked beautiful. She looked stunning. Stunning. She always looks really beautiful. She has a great stylist. But that might be like the best, my favorite look to date. Hey, yes, of course, Aiden, I can give your boyfriend Nick a shout out. Hey, how you doing? Hey, Nick, I'm glad to hear you're busy. It's good to be busy. Mic drop, I'm not going to do Severance breakdowns. I mean, Severance has already been on for a long time. I'll do a spoiler review once it's all done. Let's see here. Hold on. Let's see. Mr. Magic says, Grace, today is my partner of almost 11 years, 45th birthday. Of course, I can give him a shout out as well. Happy birthday. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're spending it together. And let's see here. Art Lover says, I was surprised at your shout out to the great penciler Stuart Immonen during this week's movie math. I love Stuart Immonen. Thanks. I'm glad. Thank you for saying that. And yes, I'm a big fan of his artwork. I wish that he drew more comics. He's still alive, right? I love Stuart Immonen. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. Dylan, your comment about the White Lotus, I would agree. I will tweet about it after it happens, that Mike White would do something so damning and disparaging to the LGBTQ community when he is a member of it himself. I find shocking, and I don't want to say anything else about it until it happens. But it's like you're on the Titanic, and I know that you're headed toward an iceberg, but I'm not allowed to say anything because the watcher won't let me. I'm like, you're heading towards the Titanic. Hey, Salty Snack. I think a lot of you, I can't give a spoiler. I'll get in so much trouble. I can't. It's funny that you think it's foreshadowed, Mason. I just thought he was going to come out to his brother. But it seems that not what happened. Zay says, Tea on Wicked Part 2. I cannot wait to see the next part of the story. Are you also excited for Snow White? I mean, I think Snow White looks really beautiful. I'm expecting to like parts of Snow White and hate parts of Snow White. And I think that's probably the way it's going to go for most people. Mike Drop says, what if he's not Doom? What if he's Iron Man? Well, it's called Doomsday. I don't know. All right, I love talking to you guys so much. I could stay on here for a very long time. But I must go because I'll be late for my appointment. However, there's a live stream tomorrow and then on Friday. So there will be 3 live streams this week. Tomorrow's will be late, though. But thank you very much for joining me. Not super late, but in the evening. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye.